Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Welcome to Karate Without Belts. I'm John, always joined by Jeremy.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Jeremy.
Happy New Year. Very cool.
Did you stay up till midnight this year?
Yeah, my daughter kind of enticed me to stay up. She wanted to see different things, and normally I'm asleep by about 10:30. I'm just like, all right, whatever. I'll just bring it in with a good nap. That works. But so I'll let all the amateurs go out on New Year's Eve. Just like
You're just letting them go out.
Yeah, I much prefer the professional drunks to hang out with more on New Year's Eve as opposed to the amateurs. So it's kind of no, it's and all kidding aside, I just have no entertainment in it at all. I'm just like, okay, whatever. It's New Year, new day. Okay, great, let's go. So
yeah, I got to see the barrage of Japanese entertainment over the last decade. Do not like pop groups. Like, maybe I just had a big distaste for it here when I was growing up in the States, but even more so in Japan now.
So, I got you. Understand.
I guess new year, but kind of same situation. Please go down the link below to look at giving anything you can to the Shurijo Rebuild Fund. Based on recent news, I think we might throw up something for Australia as well. So, because Australia is literally on fire.
Yeah. Yes. I saw the map the other day. I was just like, oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, it's affecting our friends down in New Zealand, even to the point it's affecting our friends down in New Zealand. Not that we always want to kind of shill for money on this podcast, but it's just, if we can push up any sort of ability to get people to direct their, even the smallest amount of funds, anything can help people get something rolling. So what have you been working on lately, Jeremy?
Mainly I've been just doing some very slow exercise with my knees and stuff. They started having problems again. I'm actually looking at getting consultation for stem cell injection, so we'll see how that goes. Hopefully by next week's podcast or next podcast, I've already been through the consultation, see how that goes. So that's kind of where things are at right now. So
that's good. At least it's kind of, I don't want to say progressing, but at least you're kind of finding different things to kind of move on your knees.
Yeah. So, too young to have surgery. So anyway,
it's too young. He's under the age of 65.
Yeah, exactly. So cool.
If anybody who's subscribed to our channel, you probably just saw me try to pound out 100 Nahachi Shodans at once. So I'm a little tired from that, but one thing we were talking about, and especially as the new year is rolling along, a lot of people do start karate as a hobby and kind of see karate as a hobby, and I think probably 95% of people who start karate or get into karate see it as a hobby. But then there's something that happens that generally makes people jump from doing it twice a week to doing it every day to doing it until they eat dirt. Today we're going to talk a little about what that's like and what that process is and why that happens. So I don't know if it's good to necessarily talk about obsession. Because some people might call this obsession. Would I be incorrect in saying that, Jeremy?
I mean, I guess some people would say it'd be an obsession. Some people would say it's diligence and discipline. So it just depends on what your background is, basically. So
I mean, the thing is with because we're talking about martial arts. When we're talking about people who do I want to say this in the best way possible, go to a commercial school to learn martial arts.
Right.
They're not, unless they're this place is used as a supplement for some sort of police or military academy, they're not really going to be expecting to use it, at least in kind of its intended form.
I'd say that's on the majority. Yeah, that's probably true. So,
I feel like there's a big push from people who actually went through that, having to use their martial arts to actually protect themselves, to push more traditional martial arts as something more of a exercise or self discipline activity rather than something that's for fighting.
I don't know. I guess I've seen multiple things, over the last few years in which it just seems like people are trying to go learn a set of skills and then try to use those set of skills in different arenas that really aren't the same. It's not the same setup, if that makes sense. It's
Right.
like it and I think that can be very, very dangerous as a whole. But that's that's my that's my take on it because if it's 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, that's a waltz. It's not really doing karate. But if it's hey, 1 2 then 3 and then maybe 3 1 2, just changing it up constantly, that's probably a little bit more realistic in a more streetwise or more applicable arena, if that makes sense.
Right.
But
And I think I used to train with someone who really I'll use him as an example. And I used to go to a karate school when I was younger, and it was very commercial. This is kind of before I think I did take karate seriously at this point. I just didn't know, like, of course this commercial karate school I'm going to is the number one thing in the world. What else is there outside of my small hometown in the suburbs of Philadelphia? The guy I trained with, he really thought, after the kind of maybe 2 or 3 years he had been training there, that he I guess was maybe in his late 40s at this point. So somebody who's some people would say was over the hill. Certainly didn't have the kind of dexterity or physicality able to really put his all into the training, and we could all see that. His attitude was, he was nice enough, I guess, but his attitude really wasn't, something that's serious or dedicated. He'd just show up when he could and train. And he was saying to me one day, I work around a lot of contractors and big guys, and on construction sites, and after a couple of years here, I really feel like I could, I'm not so scared of them anymore. It's a boost of confidence, but so it was quite unearned because we can all kind of see that the guy would be flat on the butt in a couple in a second or two if
right,
you try to take what he said and to put it into practice.
right. I mean, yeah, it's interesting because I remember when I used to be a security guard for Kansas City Chiefs a long time ago, and I was really fortunate. I got to work with one guy who basically kind of took me under his wing. He was like a deputy at the county sheriff's department and stuff. And I was, yeah, I wanting to use my martial arts and this, that, and the other thing, this, that, and the other thing. And he finally told me, he says, "You know what the best way to resolve a conflict is?" And I'm like, "What's that?" And he goes, "Watch what you say, listen to people, and don't shoot your mouth off." A lot of wisdom there. And what's interesting is myself and this other guy, we usually end up taking care of stuff without we'd have we'd have an altercation here or there, but we wouldn't be like some of these guys who'd end up with broken noses. They'd end up with broken arms.
Right.
I mean, they'd be getting in altercations because it's like, they didn't really use that. And I think that's a really great lesson to go back to. It's like, yeah, you can be as talented as all get out, but if you're continually shooting your mouth off, you're eventually gonna get it. It's gonna come back. I guess I'm
Like,
thankful. I'm thankful I learned that lesson during that time. So
and do you feel like you weren't able to take that lesson out from outside the school you were, or whatever training you had before, or was it just
well,
I think that was more of an age thing?
I think at that time in my training, I was so caught up in just training, and it was like train, 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 train. I mean, it was like you hit the dojo. I mean, you hit the door, and I mean, you're pretty much on the floor, and you're going, and it was just go, 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 go. And it was interesting because I sat down with my instructors, and they're like, there's a lot of wisdom to that. And it's like that's stuff that we bring up, later on, and it was interesting because he even, after we had sat down and talked, he started bringing that up earlier on, more, within the first 6 months, like, karate, self defense, life protection, all these different things isn't about physicality. It's also using your head and not getting your mouth into trouble. So it was, great lesson fairly early on, I guess.
Do you feel that lesson kind of separates kind of what we were kind of reeling back to what we were talking about before between like being somebody who just goes to the karate school twice a week as a hobby and somebody who's training every day, regardless of where they're at or what they're doing?
In some ways, yes. I don't remember where I saw this, but I can't remember if it was a leadership cinema or a leadership seminar or something I went to, but it, it was something along the lines of whatever you say, you're actually speaking into. If you're speaking into, confidence, that's what's going to be. If you're speaking as, hey, this is a hobby that I do, guess what? It's going to be a hobby. If you speak, this is what I'm about, and this is one of my core beliefs. This is one of the core things that I do and that I grasp on. If I look at it from that perspective and I say it that way, guess what? That's how you're going to attack it. Because as you say it, it's going to continue to be on your mind from that perspective.
Hmm.
And I've always thought that was kind of an interesting take because they were talking about, you can be in a, it was more from a work situation, but you can look at it from training perspective as well. But from a work perspective, if you go in and say, I can't stand this boss, I can't stand this, guess what? Every day it's going to be a pain in the butt. It is. You're going to not like the person. You're going to hate what you're doing if you continue to have that conversation and speak into it. So, in other words, you're fueling that fire. So,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Right, and I feel like there's a kind of the weird self-talk, not weird, but because everyone does this, right? They have this like self-talk they always have with themselves,
Right.
regardless of where they are or what they're doing. Kind of, we always talk to ourselves in a not a strange way, but just in a kind of way that we can, because we're reflective, we're always we're probably the only self-reflexive beings on the planet. Well, I never thought I'd say that on a karate podcast.
Hey, it's New Year, man. So,
New year, new me. But I think that's what I think hobbies, because hobbies is a weird word as it is, because it just kind of implies like it's just something you do when you don't have anything else you need to do, so you just kind of end up doing that thing because it's what you like to do. Someone can say watching TV is a hobby. Someone told me once drinking and smoking was a hobby, and this is a weird. It's kind of Jeremy's head just went back on that.
all right, well, whatever. Knock your
Well,
socks off, I guess. Okay.
yeah, I mean, you can do that, but I think with karate itself, it could just be done as a hobby. I've heard somebody in an interview was surprised that older people in Okinawa were actually taking up karate in their older age for like the first time in their lives, just because they had time to do it, right?
Well, there's a
Not the
lot of,
image we tend to have, but
yeah. Not only is it around that conversation, like we were talking about, and what they speak into, but it's also what is driving them. What's actually driving? Is it, hey, this is kind of a cool thing to do? Woohoo! Yeah, all right, woo! Yeah. Or is it, hey, maybe, as someone who is more wise in life, maybe they want to look at, like, what can my contribution be to my family, or further my culture, or something along that aspect. Maybe it is, hey, I want to learn this about my culture that I don't know.
I didn't have time for.
Yeah. There for a while, I really wanted to know about the founding fathers of the United States. And I started reading books on the founding fathers of the United States.
And you listen to Hamilton a lot.
Yeah, no. I read books on, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, different, you know, Alexander Hamilton, not the play, but
And you watch The Crossing with Jack Daniels a lot.
yeah, exactly. But Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, all these people who were some of the founding fathers of the United States, and it's like, what was their mindset? Why did they do the things that they did? And it's interesting looking back now. That's also kind of how I looked at my martial arts training and stuff. It was like, when I went in and took lessons from whoever it was, whether it was, Sensei Oyata, or Mike Miner or Robbie Morris, whoever, it was like, what is the background that they're coming? It wasn't just like, okay, I'm looking at the technique. What's their background of actually showing me what they're showing me?
Right. And I think that when people get, when you meet someone, you generally ask like, "Oh, what's your background? What did you do? What do you do? What do you do for a living?" All this other kind of boring stuff that no one really likes actually talking about. Um, but especially when you see someone as the kind of font of knowledge that you take from, or that you look towards, you tend to kind of want to know what are the pipes connecting to that font.
Well,
And
and I think it's also to show another level of respect to them as well,
right.
what they went through, what they had to go through to get to where they were at and stuff like that. So
And I think most people who are teachers have to deal with in this regard is you have to be able, to a degree, cater to both. You have to be able to talk to those people, because anyone who's coming in to your school, to your class, to your backyard to train, down to your basement to train,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But it's, the hope is that they take it as seriously as you do.
Well, I think one of the things that I guess I've always took upon as an instructor has always been, okay, great. What is going to motivate you on the other side? How am I going to get through to you to see things from my point of view? Yeah,
You don't want it to just be something. You kind of have to accept the fact that you might not be able to find that in the way that you want it.
right. And it may show up something totally different. Like for me, I'll never forget. I kind of looked, I think everybody goes through this phase, okay, I'm kind of start out, going one day a week and this, that, and the other thing. All right, great. This is kind of cool. And this, that, and the other thing.
Make
Um,
friends,
yeah,
make enemies,
yeah,
beg
exactly.
frenemies.
Yeah. And then what was it? I ended up going to a birthday seminar with Mr. Sensei Oyata, and I was completely dumbfounded in some of the things. I had never even thought some of that stuff was possible. I'm like, what? Huh? I'm watching him knock people out. Whoa. I'm like, never seen this before. That's kind of wild. And I'll never forget the next class I came into, and I remember telling Rob, I think I probably told this story before, but I,
Oh well.
I told Robbie, I'm like, I don't think that works. And he goes, you want me to show you? And I'm like, yeah, I want you to show. And I remember Dolores and Vicky were like, Darren, you really don't want him to show you this. This is not something you really want. I'm like, no, I want to know that this stuff works. And I should have picked up on the Cheshire Cat grin and Robbie like, oh yeah, I'll be more than happy to show you. All I know is lines me up, and the next thing I know, they're waking me up on the floor. That was it. I mean, I was out. But as kind of a serious situation, you really don't want to get knocked out. But on the same token, it's one of those things where that made me believe a lot in what I was doing and took it a lot more serious. Like, whoa, it was like, okay, it's time to step up to the plate. Either I'm going to do this, or oh yeah, I'm just going to do a little hobby, yay, you know.
Yeah,
But
and I think one, we don't condone knocking people out in dojos to prove your point. Uh,
oh, unless they need it.
and here on Friday Without Belts, we do not condone everyone's opinion.
Sorry.
Well, we can briefly talk about that because we're talking. We can veer off on this for a minute about safety.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
100 because what that was happening in the late 80s, early 90s, where that stuff really wasn't super in place until somebody got pretty badly knocked out of the tournament, and then that was the end of doing a certain kind of kumite.
Mm-hmm.
So, big thing is about safety, folks. Make sure everyone is safe. Do not attempt techniques on people just to prove a point. It's not important to do that. Everyone reacts differently to different techniques, especially if you're talking about some stuff like pressure point hitting and stuff like that. And there's people out there who do it very stupidly and are weirdly culty about it. And do not get involved with those people because it's not worth your time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is definitely a two-way trust, definitely from sensei to uke. I mean, definitely. I mean, you've got to be able to trust each other, but on the same token, if you're doing those kind of things, definitely know the person that you're doing them to. After my experience, whenever I did stuff like that, I was uber cautious of it. So
Yeah.
so
It's important to know like what the restraint level should be when you're training, and especially when you're talking about, well, we're gonna go full tilt on someone. You don't need to go full tilt on someone. That's why they invented that like big rubber monstrosity called Battling Bob.
yeah,
That's why there's spare tires. That's why there's punching bags. That's why there's batted armor. That's why there's X, Y, and Z out there to do that on. You can get a small reaction out of someone. Probably yes, you're gonna get a big reaction out of them.
yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
that might be a better conversation for a different time. But
Right.
um,
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I didn't mean to bring up anything unsafe or anything, but I mean,
no, no,
it's,
no, no, no.
but
It's an important conversation, and like we can kind of left to turn and right turn on this because I think that's important because you get one of the things, especially with traditional martial arts, there tends to be a lot of people who want to try to overprove themselves, and then they end up getting hurt
yeah,
because they're afraid of looking bad in front of their boxing and MMA friends or whatever, and that is just unnecessary.
yeah,
So
absolutely, absolutely. So,
And I think that can dovetail nicely into the other extreme, which is taking your martial arts way, way, way too seriously to the point of that's the only thing in your life.
Yeah, I mean, go. Yeah, it's a new year, so I'll just start off with kind of a cheesy Karate Kid, quote, and it's like, when Mr. Miyagi says, whole life have balance. You people have to have balance in your life.
But you gotta have something else than just kicking and punching. And even with the supposed moral compass that is in karate, um, it isn't really much of anything to go on.
Right. Right. I mean, if all you do is one thing, it kind of makes you kind of dull, to be perfectly honest. But that's just one way to look at it. I mean, there's more to life than just one thing. So,
Exactly. And I think like in especially in karate, it's the best thing there is, I think, about a dojo community and about that is that you can have a community of people who train together and do one thing together, but they can do other things together as well.
right. Oh, absolutely. And it's not just the martial arts community. I mean, with me being into IT and IT security and stuff, I mean, I see people, they're around computers, from every waking moment. And people ask me, what do you do? And I'm like, as soon as I leave work, I shut it off. I do not. Uh, my wife likes to call me the least technical person she's ever met. I really do not like to deal with it outside of work. It's like, and she asked me the other day why, and I'm like, I'm not getting paid for it. I really don't want to do it. That's my career. That's what I do. If I'm not getting paid for it, I don't want to do it.
Good. Actually, a student and a friend of mine who's an accountant had told me kind of said something similar where he would be out at a bar with somebody and be like, his name was John too, and he's just say like, "Hey, what's X plus Y?" And he's like, "Go f yourself." Like it
Yeah,
equals go f yourself.
yeah, exactly,
Um,
exactly. You know,
yeah, I get that entirely. Um, I think in those regards, like you can get the hobbyist and the serious martial artist together, and they can accept each other. You can accept the person who's just kind of there and they're not really taking their training super seriously, but they tend to be a really good outlet for the community at hand. And you can have the really serious people who are training very, very hard 7 days a week who aren't good at that.
right. Well, and then you got some that are, then you go back to the balance thing where they do have balance in their life. They've got a balance about them, and so it's you know it, I mean there's a huge spectrum what we're talking about, definitely. I mean, what's interesting is a lot of the people that I've seen that just do it, constantly, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, day in, day out. They just live, eat, sleep, breathe it, constantly. 9 times out of 10, I've seen them either crack to where it's like, they just get to the point where they just stop, or something else will come up and then they'll either end up in a very, very bad situation because maybe they weren't able to take care of that piece in their life, if that makes sense.
Well, and because they don't want because there's also an aspect of chasing the dragon, right? So
Right.
I think this is one way people go from hobbyists to overly like to zealots
Yeah.
in a way because they want to be the most skilled, the best, the greatest, whatever, right? They'll and I can mark my own. If your transition was getting knocked down at the floor
Yeah.
and then suddenly realizing that this stuff works, mine was getting a black belt and not feeling I earned it. At that point, I was going to karate every day. I was doing karate every day.
Yeah,
I was doing eat, sleep, drink, peruse with karate. Wake up and I would like be sleeping and accidentally punch a wall, right?
yeah,
Um, but it wasn't good enough. None of it was good enough, and it was no one around me's fault.
right.
And so and then that burned me out. So it does come down to balance. I think you're right on that, but I also think it comes down to knowing, what is enough. I think people who are hobbyists can kind of realize like they can do more, but if you're overexerting yourself onto whatever you're doing, you're probably gonna crash.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I heard an interesting term this summer. It was from the a leadership program called Leadership Summit that I usually go to every year, and there was a term called Gitmo,
Right.
and I'm like, Gitmo? What is Gitmo? And the guy's like, good enough to move on. And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. There are certain things you want to dig in deep, and I look at my training. You know, there are certain things I really wanted to get in deep and really understand the ins, the outs, the ups, downs, sideways. I wanted to understand all of it about. There are other things like, okay, I understand the basics, good enough to move on. And I think everything has those things. Like I mentioned on a previous podcast, one of the weapons that I'm not I wouldn't say I guess I really don't get a lot out of, and it's just me. Me personally, I've never really gotten a lot out of it, and that is the comma. I mean, I can go through basic kata. I can explain a lot of the the physical aspects of it, and basically the design of it and things like that. That's fine, but as far as really wanting to know the ins and outs and ups and downs and all that stuff, don't care. I'm good with just that base knowledge. Move on. Okay.
There's so many people I know who just hate comma. I need to find a couple of comma apologists and do kind of like a mini series on just like these are the people in the world who like comma. Let's appreciate them.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the people that really like comma, cool. I can really appreciate them. I really do, but I just have never really gotten into that. That's just me.
You've
So,
never had to cut grass with them.
oh yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yep.
I've had to cut grass with them
Oh, that's cool.
in several countries actually.
And so I have no. What was it? I have had to actually trim bushlands with it a couple times, but other than that, yeah, that was it. So
I remember what is it? And get into a little bit of family history where it's like my dad has always been away, worked away, and he was away on work, and his house. I forget there was something up with his house where he wasn't there. It was either rented and then people moved out, or something had happened, and the lawnmower was broken, or I didn't know how to turn it on. I'm like the least tool apt person, but I actually had unsharpened commas in my car. Unsharpened, like century type commas.
hmm,
And I just went out his backyard and managed to just I guess from just like blunt force to grasp blades taken off. This is comma talk on Karate Without Belts, everyone.
yeah,
But I mean, you find the things that you really enjoy training with, and I think that can be a good hook for people to actually transition from where they are in terms of just seeing karate as a hobby to being something they take seriously. But I guess we kind of yarned a little bit about how we've done that or what's really driven us to do that. When people kind of make that next step into taking on martial arts as something that they do, right? Rather than just something that like, oh yeah, I go every once in a while, but it's more something that they integrate into themselves. And they speak to it in a different way, right? They speak to karate in a more serious voice.
Yeah.
What would be, I guess, some suggestions we could give people, or some words of encouragement or words of advice that we could give people to say, hey, this is something worth your time, but at the same time, be careful of.
I think probably my piece of advice would be just constantly be in conversation with yourself, not in a crazy way or anything like that, but just just a conversation with yourself of what is it that I'm really wanting to do with this? Is it just I want to work out? Is it, hey, I'm doing what's the new phase now? Was it CrossFit or something like that? I don't know what it is, man.
Well,
Okay.
CrossFit, which was I don't know. Yeah, but yeah,
So I know a lot of people do that. I mean, cool, awesome, great. That's awesome. But what is it that you're really wanting out of it? Are you wanting more of a physical workout? Are you wanting to actually understand the art? Are you wanting to understand what has come about of it, or the historical pieces of it, and the importance of that, and things of that nature? And I don't know. I mean, I think each person's got to look at it from that perspective. I mean, if I know a couple people, they are just happy with just doing the workout and just kind of getting familiar with stuff, and that's it. I know one person, honestly, it to me it's kind of sad because I know I've known the one person, what, 12, 15 years, and they have a great talent and they have great skill, but they never put it all together.
and I think there is a piece in me wants to say that person. It just takes the right kind of push to push that person to kind of put it all together. It's not necessary,
Yeah,
but I actually think it's okay if you're, especially if you're teaching that person, to kind of take them aside and say, hey, you can really put this together if you take it a little more seriously. You I think that's the room for the to be senpai. Senpai, notice me. You can I think that is where you can have room to be like, you gotta see, maybe like point at somebody else who is starting to put it together and say,
yeah,
you know what, you've got everything it takes. Not something you want to do, cool, but there would be you would be you would be more than just a person who comes here. You would be a contributor.
yeah. And I think the other thing, is some type of confidence within themselves, because I see that sometimes where it's, oh, you're stuck into a certain pattern. Like, okay, we do this, we do this, we do this. But if you change it, like let's say your pattern is, I do exercise one, I do exercise two, then I do Nanachi Shodan, and then I do Nanachi Nidan, then I do Nanachi Sandan, then I do exercise three. And that's the pattern they've always done, and that's the pattern they're always going to do. And if you change it up, it's almost like, uh-oh, I don't know what to do now. Or the other one of the big things, that I've always tried to do is make sure I'm not getting room acclimated on stuff whenever I'm doing something.
Right.
I wouldn't say it's comical, but it's almost comical watching somebody who's done like one thing from one dimension for years and years and years and years and years, and then you turn them and they don't know how to do it.
Right. That is a that's a big thing. I learned early on, especially when I was starting my hand at teaching.
Yeah,
I would try to make try to make good on that. I think for me, I feel like there's for you can't force somebody to go over to that part of it, but you can encourage people. I think more to. I think it's also in the structure of how you talk about karate and
yeah,
the kind of what you do with it. If you treat it like a religion, I don't think you're going to get the people you want to get, right? I don't think you're going to have what you want to have, or you will, and you're going to end up having something really weird. If you treat it like a family, you're going to get what you get in a family, all
Yeah,
right? Good eggs, bad eggs. But if you treat it as something serious, but something that is self-aware, then I think you will get all sorts of people in that community. You will get all sorts of people happy to start training. You will get all sorts of people knowledgeable and respectful, and all sorts of different and will fill in all sorts of different gaps. And you can have a real dojo. You can have a real community without having to compromise.
yeah, and and to tag on to that, I think one of the things what you're really kind of speaking to, and I look back at it, it was like, yeah, this is dead on. I think there has to be an integrity about what you're doing and how you're training.
Right.
There has to be a level of intensity and integrity, you know, like the guiding principles that are set up in the schools. Are you actually living those, or are you just memorizing them to get to the next level and stuff like that?
Are you aware of when they were written, who they were written by, and like how seriously to take them?
Yeah,
Can
exactly.
they? Should they be taken seriously? Like they should be taken seriously, but at the same time understood in their own context and applied to your context appropriately.
Right. Absolutely. And if something's in those guiding principles, are you going to follow those principles? Are you going to follow that? And I think that kind of, I mean, I think that develops, people that want to change over from a hobby over to a serious practitioner, not
Right.
just in not just in martial arts, but just in anything in life. I mean, you look at basic Christianity. I mean, we're not going there very much. I'm just going to sidestep, then I'm coming right back.
Catechism of Jeremy, Saint
Well,
Jeremy of Wakeman.
no, but I mean, if you look at a Christian church, people are going to go there and they're going to be believers. They're going to follow what the church is about if the people that are leading it have an integrity about what they're actually doing in that church. If not, they're going to leave and go somewhere else. Same way with martial arts, same way with anything. It's like if the people you're training with and training under have an integrity around it, you're either you're going to develop that integrity by training with them, or you're going to move on to something else, or you'll burn out, or okay, I'm just
You'll
going.
putter on to be whatever, and that's kind of where it becomes the worst. When it
Yeah,
just
exactly.
when it that's martial arts at its worst. That's anything at its worst when it's puttering. Um,
Yes.
Sometimes you got to deal with the worst in order to get to the best, but you know I feel like especially in those situations, nobody understands who's in control, even though everyone can be in control,
Right.
right? Um, there's enough teachers. I'll end on this because you're exactly right. It's about integrity, and kind of going back to what I was talking about at the school that I first started training at. The owner of that school, not the teacher, because he really wasn't a teacher. He was just the owner of the school. He made himself very, a face to the parents essentially, because he was just had nothing but kids and his customers.
Hmm.
But his teachers taught the integrity part of it. He tried to show off integrity, but his teachers, people who I valued as my real teachers there that kept me going, um,
Yeah.
taught us with integrity. And that's what kind of made that transition out of there a little heartbreaking. Was that at a very formative time, like seeing kind of what's more than skin deep from people, and kind of having to accept that even though these teachers taught with integrity, they were with somebody who really wouldn't really carry that for them. So It's important to take away those good things from your experiences, especially if you are a very serious you are serious minded with your martial arts, with your karate. But to understand that it's okay to walk away, and you can walk away with those good lessons, and because you need to grow as well.
Right. And especially when it does interfere with your own personal integrity. And I've been a part of that a couple times. So, yeah.
Cool, cool. Well, I think we kind of kicked that can around a little bit.
Well, a little bit.
So, Jeremy, I know you are going to get your Christopher Reeves consultation on
Oh, I don't know about that. Yeah, I mean,
to make a South Park
yeah,
reference.
it's going to be, it's more than likely going to be sometime this week. So I thought my knee was doing a lot better than just out of the blue. I think I was probably doing just a little too much. And I mean, it was literally almost put me down for about 2 days straight because I literally couldn't hardly walk.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's the holidays as well. So,
well, well, no, it was, yeah, I just did too much trying to get, and that's something that I have to manage, especially right now. It's like whenever I start getting really into it, it's like, okay, just simmer down, just go slow. At this point, I need to go slow. I can't go full tilt. And and so that bothers me because I'm not a go slow kind of person usually. So it's like, okay, I'm just gonna go slow right now. But yeah, but my wife and I, we both pretty well decided, like, look, I need to do something's got to change. I can't continue at this pace and go slow at at this because it's driving me nuts. So,
yeah, I
but
mean that's. I mean, I can appreciate where you're at, even though I've never been there. I had some leg challenges of my own, but they actually ended up, thankfully, not being the worst things in the world. Tendinitis kind of sucks, but you can kind of get over that hump pretty all right if you're doing the right things. But
yeah,
where you're at is just kind of a whole other level of that.
yeah, well, yeah. This is the first time I've had to deal with this, so it's new. So just got to deal with it. So
This week I'll be working, just kind of resetting the table on basics, and just working on Hachi Shodan. And we kind of have a January challenge going on right now on the channel. So anybody who's listened to this point, thank you very much. And I hope everybody participates in that as well. And so we can maybe get to see the results of that at the end of the month. So it is frightening recording yourself doing karate. It scares the hell out of me. I hate being on camera, but it's a new challenge for the new year.
cool, very cool.
Cool. All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening, and don't forget to keep training.